Thank you for plugging into this Family Life News podcast, streaming issues-driven, family-focused news.
This is Faith Under Fire. Each Thursday on Family Life, we give voice to religious battlegrounds in this nation. I'm your host, Tracy Lynn. With us today, Caleb Dalton, legal counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom. So, based on the headlines and the pulse of the current culture, there's a growing concern about the protection of religious freedom in our nation, as some cry discrimination. Well, today we get to highlight a win for religious liberty on the college campus. We've learned a Texas university will now grant permission to a Christian student organization that wants to require its leaders hold to specific beliefs in order to hold top roles in that group. Caleb, would you tell us how this issue even started?
Absolutely. Well, Ratio Christi is a student group that's dedicated to apologetics, that is, giving a reason for their faith in Christ on campus. And you can imagine, because of that, they welcome everybody to come to their club. They want anybody to come to their meetings, right? But it's important that their leadership actually be Christians. They understand the reason for Christ. That's what Ratio Christi means, is the reason for Christ. So when they applied to become an organization on campus, to have access to meeting rooms, be able to invite speakers, and have access to the same funding that other organizations have access to, the university first told them, no, you can't be an organization on campus because you require your leaders to be Christians. And that ultimately led to a federal lawsuit.
So, good news, eventually the school backed down. They backed down on their own, is that right?
Yeah, so after we filed the lawsuit, we were able to work with the university to draft new policies that now allow any student group to have their leaders affirm the beliefs of that group, right? Obviously, it makes a lot of sense for a Christian group, or let's say a Muslim group that doesn't want to have a Jewish leader, but it also makes sense for political groups as well, right? The college Democrats wouldn't want to have a Republican as the president of their club, and vice versa. It just makes sense when you have an organization that's organized around a particular idea that the people leading it actually believe what they're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it true that just 3 years ago, a similar Ratio Christi chapter in Colorado also faced a hurdle to being officially recognized by their school?
That's right. Almost the exact same thing happened. And we've seen this with other organizations around the country as well, where universities had said, no, you are not allowed to have leadership requirements. And that violates the First Amendment, because every student group should be free to choose leaders that share the same beliefs of the group. Unfortunately, a lot of universities we're seeing around the country, and even some at the high school level too, are not affirming that core principle of the First Amendment. They're putting these hurdles in the way of allowing organizations to meet on campus and to really participate in that marketplace of ideas. They're saying some ideas are acceptable, but your ideas aren't. We even saw at this one here in Houston, they allowed other student organizations to have leadership requirements, but specifically targeted Ratio Christi in this case. And we're thankful we were able to get those policies changed so that all students can now have equal access on campus.
Excellent. And again, it's always nice to talk about a win. Based on some of the cases that you're working on, Caleb, does it seem that opponents of religious freedom are simply testing the boundaries to see if Christians will cave at the first sign of opposition? And if that's the case, what advice do you have for us?
I think that really does happen a lot. You know, Christians, oftentimes we want to be nice, right? And thinking of filing a federal lawsuit doesn't sound very nice. But ultimately what it is it's loving your neighbor. You're standing up for the rights of everyone, whether they agree with you or not, to be able to meet together, to communicate ideas, and ultimately to have the freedom to share the gospel of Christ with others. Because if we want that freedom for us, we have to have that freedom for everyone. And that's a classical value of the First Amendment, both of free speech and of free exercise. So I would say, don't be afraid to stand up and push back. If somebody wants to silence you, what they're doing is saying you can't share the message of the truth, of the gospel, or whatever else it is that you're organized around. That is a core message that you have to share. We're commanded to share the gospel as Christians. So don't back down. You know, I'm not saying to be mean, but there's tools that we have here in the United States to promote freedom for all. And that's really what loving your neighbor is about.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Caleb, what broader implications does the outcome in the University of Houston Clear Lake case have on other ministries and even churches?
We're hopeful that other universities will look and see what the University of Clear Lake did and learn from it. They'll learn that what they initially did was wrong, and then also see that these new policies they've implemented could be a model for other universities and say, look, we can have this marketplace of ideas on campus. We don't have to be afraid of different ideas, but we can actually engage with them and talk about them, and the truth will win out in the end. And we're hopeful as well that the Christian ministries around the country can continue to have leaders that stand up and that believe in the core values of the ministry, because the First Amendment protects that, and we at Alliance Defending Freedom, we're going to keep fighting for that.
Caleb, thank you so much. Where can folks go if they want to learn more about this case and other cases that your team is working on?
Yeah, I appreciate it. You can go to adflegal.org and find out about all our cases right there.
That's Caleb Dalton with ADF Legal. I'm Tracy Lynn, Family Life News.